Hey there, fellow dishwasher and meal maker. Would you like some company while doing your chores? The Ancestral Kitchen Podcast community is a place to share your kitchen wins and failures, ask questions of other like-minded cooks who actually know what it's like to stare down a pig head sitting on the kitchen counter or proof a loaf of sourdough bread, maybe even gluten-free, to perfection. You're one of us in here. Our non-social media forum is a safe and friendly space to meet friends and relish in new, old ideas. Once a month, we get together on a live call and chat all things ancestral. Alison and I record a special intimate podcast where we share more informally and off the cuff, answering questions submitted by our community and sharing advance news of anything happening in the podcast. Come and be a part of a community as passionate about the way food can change our lives as you are. There are 5 levels of involvement to suit any budget, and every penny you pledge goes directly into building the podcast and continuing to help us share this work, changing the world one plate at a time. Every month, Alison and I ask our supporters to send us their questions so we can tackle them on a special podcast called Kitchen Table Chats, which is shared exclusively with our supporters as a special bonus and a thank you for keeping the podcast on the air for all our beloved listeners around the world. In these episodes, we are much more informal and perhaps a bit more forward than we are in the main feed. In the summer, it has become our tradition to take 1 or 2 of these episodes and post them to the main feed, so you can step in and enjoy this casual, more intimate time with us. Many of our supporters tell us these are their favorite episodes, maybe because sometimes we get a little bit obnoxious and opinionated. In this episode, we answered questions from Hannah, Brittney, and Ella, 4 questions in all. We tackled how to handle potlucks and events where you share food with others and others share food with you. We talked about how to help children adjust or transition to ancestral food. And do we have thoughts on bringing ancestral food to the plates of foster children that may be in our homes? We also discussed the fun question, how did Alison and I meet? Lastly, we talked about attending social obligations with young children, with all of the junk food and potential scenes that can come from repeatedly telling children they cannot have all of the good things being put in front of them, or even handed to them by well-meaning people. There is also a lot more in this episode, including discussion of good books Alison and I have been reading, and several good titles we recommend. Alison's quick pancakes make an appearance, and a contribution from our supporter Rebekah, the most interesting cock-a-leekie soup. Welcome to the Ancestral Kitchen Podcast.
I'm Alison, a European town dweller living in England.
And I'm Andrea, living on a family farm in Northwest Washington State, USA.
Pull up a chair at the table and join us as we talk about eating, cooking, and living with ancestral food wisdom in a modern world kitchen.
Hello, Alison. How are you today?
Hi, Andrea. Yeah, I'm well. I just heard Rob getting the loft ladder down. That's a noise that's going to be ingrained in me forever, having spent, the last 6 weeks just listening to him getting the loft ladder down, putting it back up.
We have one of those ladders in our garage that you pull down from the ceiling.
Yeah,
and
that's
it's like a squeak and like a grind, then a clang.
Yeah.
And then a sort of
exactly.
wonk wonk as you pull the ladder down. So
Yeah.
I wonder if that's what you're hearing over there.
It's that. Because we've got a whole internet factory up in the loft. We've got this internet so we can talk to each other. But Bob's mum just moved in and Bob's trying to help her sort out some things on her computer. So he's gone up there to put another internet up there so that they can use that one, not this one. It's like a whole internet world in our loft.
You know, Rob should probably also take a little box of chocolates and like a blanket and a pillow, something to read. Just make himself a little nest up there.
Exactly.
he can kind of relax while
We
he's
could do a little
checking
treat
everybody's
for him.
Wi-Fi or
I
whatever.
could hide something, couldn't I, by the place where he goes and say, look here.
Oh,
and then
yeah.
he'd have a treat for being up
Does
there.
Gabriel go up there?
Oh, Gabriel, you can't stop him going up there. He's always up there.
Yeah, I figured.
Some
so
things arrived for
send him.
Christmas this morning for him. And Rob was like, we can't even put them in the loft because it goes up there.
This isn't a trick I've learned for hiding things in the freezer. Could you put it in a box labeled something else?
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
We've done that, like a box
idea.
that's like electrical cords or something.
Yeah, but no, if it was electrical cords, Gabriel would be in there.
Yeah,
Just is there
good point.
anything he wouldn't be in? I don't know.
No,
Anyway,
probably not. Not at that age.
So it's nice and early for you. Have you had some breakfast yet, or was your last meal last night?
Well, I have tea, but I'll be eating when I get off of here. But I had actually a tasty dinner last night. It was inspired by our Kitchen Live, and Rebekah talked about making cock-a-leekie soup.
Yeah.
In England when she was there visiting.
Yeah.
And so we made that
Okay.
yesterday. It was actually really great because I was taking Jacob to a piano lesson. So I just kind of, I kind of dumped this soup onto the stove and then left.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we came back that night, you pour it through a strainer and then shred the meat off the bones back in.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if anybody has shredded stewing hens, but it's always a little bit more effort than shredding like a patted chicken, if you will. But it's kind of entertaining. So everybody did their chores, cleaning up and whatnot, while I shredded chicken back into the pot. And then, do you remember how she said she cooked it with plums or that prunes?
Prunes, yeah.
And that was kind of traditional.
Yeah.
So I didn't have prunes, as it turns out. But what I did when I served our bowls, I didn't do this for the kids, but Gary and I sprinkled maybe 10 dried wolfberries into each of our bowls. And then I also had a jar of honey fermented jalapenos that Rachel DeThample had inspired.
Yeah.
So I sprinkled a couple of those on top too. And oh my goodness, it was really good.
I've
And
got
we
a
all
question.
slept really well.
You said you strained it. Does that mean that the leeks stayed in the strainer and you didn't have them in the soup?
Yes. So what the recipe calls for, at least the one I read, there's probably different ones out there. You know how it goes. But you strain the soup out, and you pour the broth back into the pot. And then, actually, I didn't have anywhere to set the strainer. You know how you put the strainer in the bowl, strain the pot into the bowl, and then you have a strainer that's dripping.
Yeah.
And so I set the strainer back on top of the pot, and then I poured the broth back over the strainer into the pot, and then I put the strainer back into right. And then I actually the recipe calls for then putting the whites of the leeks into the pot at that point. But you happen to know that I have somebody who doesn't want to eat onions.
Yeah.
And I said, well, these aren't onions and they won't be in the soup. So I knew I wouldn't be able to add them back in.
Right.
But actually, I think it was pretty perfect. The texture maybe would have been, I don't know, different. But
yeah. How I wonder how you could even separate the white bits from the green bits in your sieve to put them back in. Wouldn't that be
sorry. I should have been more specific. They have you cut the green bits and put it in when it's cooking, and then cut the white bits and set them aside. So the white bits weren't cooked.
Oh, I see. So you could have put those in later, at a later stage, after you'd strained it.
Yeah, so they would have been a little crunchy and crispy. What I did was I just set the bowl in the fridge. Well, actually, a fun story. Our fridge stopped working, so it's in a fridge on our deck. But that is just going to be used for something else.
Gosh, I am
probably sausage related.
We've always had, by just sheer coincidence, 2 fridges in our house until now. We've only got 1 fridge, so if something happens to our fridge, we're in trouble. We'll see. Yeah, hopefully not.
Yeah. Did you eat before we got on?
Yeah. thinking, what do we have? What do we have? It's just so chaotic here because we just all arrived back from Stella's house, Rob's mum's house, with her in tow and a big van last night.
Yeah, this isn't even our normal day.
Yeah, exactly. We had to shove
the whole family
the
was
day.
like, "You're recording tomorrow. You're not recording today." It's like
What's
an ordeal.
Going on? We had pancakes because I put a bread on when we got back last night, but it's in the oven now. Actually, Rob's in charge of it. But so we didn't have bread. So I mixed together some pancake mixture this morning, which was about 60% a wheat called YQ wheat, which is sold by Hodmedods in the UK, and it's a wheat that was developed over time by a famous kind of grower in the south of England by taking old strains of wheat, like heritage strains of wheat that he read about in the area, and then testing it out in the fields. What actually thrived the best. Okay, we'll use some of this, like a natural sort of heritage selection, as would have happened, before industrialisation. And so this wheat is called YQ wheat, and it's something to do with the DNA or something of it. I don't know why it's called YQ. Anyway, we tried it to see whether Rob would be okay with it, because he was previously okay with a wheat called Squarehead Masters, which was a 1930s thatching wheat. And turns out he's fine with this YQ wheat too, because it's made from old strains of wheat. So it was about 60% that, and the other 40% was Emma, which again is grown in this country from Hodmedods, and I ground both of those in the mock mill. Then I put a little spoon of sourdough starter in and the water and some salt and left it just on the side all morning. And then I fried that up in some lard, and there was some leftover cold cauliflower in the fridge. Rob had that. I cooked some Brussels sprouts. We both had Brussels sprouts. And I had an egg, which I fried after the pancakes. And Rob had a little bit of leftover mackerel. And Gabriel's off inventing things today at his session he loves. So it was just the two of us eating. And then I've got my oat straw tea, and I had 2 delicious chocolates, 100% cacao, just before we came up.
Perfection.
So yeah, very, very nice indeed.
Okay. And having no bread and then having to make a pancake is such a good kind of reminder of I don't know, Brittney and I were talking about this the other day, like the rolling over, the continuous nature of an ancestral lifestyle, and how when you get pulled out of it, there's this idea of go on a vacation for a couple of days and come home, and with an ancestral lifestyle, you can do it, obviously. And at the same time, it's also, everything's so dependent on this like continuous nature of things. And it doesn't lend itself so well to the stops and starts that industrialized culture is very, very prone to.
Yeah, they kind of encourage it even, well, why would you bother doing all this stuff that takes 3-4 days in rotation to come to fruition when you could just stop off at a big supermarket on the way home and pick up a dish that you just have to stab the plastic cover on the front and put it in your microwave, Why would you do anything? Stab it
Such
to let the air come
language.
out and put it in the microwave. Oh, Rob's mum had a microwave, but we haven't brought it, which really pleases me.
Oh, yay. That would have, we evaded that altogether by not being able to run a microwave on our power system.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Okay.
But that is nice. I feel like the farther away you get from, I'm just going to use microwaves as an example of the machine. Like the farther away you get from microwaves, the more of a jolt they are when you see them.
Oh, they're horrible.
When you go somewhere and somebody says, why don't you just pop it in the microwave? And I'm just like, what? Like just the thought didn't occur to me. My mind was already mentally set to get out a pan, put a little water in it, take a little time, sit down and wait. You know what I mean? And they're like, well, this just takes 30 seconds. And it's like, I can't even adapt to the 30 seconds. I'm like, I'm not ready yet. Like emotionally, I'm not there.
I wrote an article last week about the different types of oats there are, because there's just so many and they're all called different things and it's really confusing. And I had to include in it instant oats and quick oats.
Sorry.
I had to look up and see how long they take. And it's like, so quick oats weren't quick enough that take 2 to 4 minutes to cook. No, that wasn't quick enough. Someone had to invent instant oats that only take a minute, and you can pour boiling water over them, leave them a minute, and then you can eat oatmeal. It's just like,
quicker.
It's exactly like the microwave thing. It's just like, really?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to pour this over I want to stand there and stir them. Yes, I want to stir them. I want to be in my kitchen.
I want to wait.
And I want it to take 25, 30 minutes. Thank you very much.
Something's developing.
Yeah.
Jacob sometimes talks about teleporting or apparating, apparating like in Harry Potter or whatever. Isn't that the one where they like disappear and appear somewhere else or something?
Yes, that's right.
I don't know all the words. Anyways, he was talking about like, wouldn't it be so cool if we could teleport? Then we could just do this. And I told him, if people could teleport, like none of that, the entire framework of your life would be different. Like everything changes. Everything is based on it takes time to get somewhere.
Yeah.
And in a way, we live in a world of teleportation because, before for one, I'm talking to you over the ocean. But aside from that, if I wanted to go and see you, we'd be planning like a multi-month journey for me to go.
Yeah.
I'd probably stay with you for 2 or 3 months or a year and then take a long journey home, but I could, if I really wanted to, if I was say a business person like this, I could just fly to Stroud and be there for an afternoon and literally fly home the next day.
Yeah. If you were Donald Trump with Air Force One, you could do it.
Yeah. Go anywhere you want. But so it is kind of like we can teleport and everything about our world changed. And, you were talking the other day about walking and how long it takes to walk somewhere. And if I said, let's just hop in the car, we could walk down there or drive there in 5 minutes. And it just, the entire day changed, Yeah. I don't know. It's just interesting.
Absolutely.
What do we have for the questions?
I've got one more thing to say for the questions, if that's allowed. It's really interesting, that perspective of everything changes when you can teleport or even travel. I've just finished reading a book called The Glass Blower, a fiction book set in Venice, and it follows the story of one particular female glassmaker. And what's really, I don't know if it's unique, but very interesting about it at least, is that the book has 5 parts, and each of those 5 parts is set in a completely different time, part of history, but it is the same characters that live in those 5 different time periods.
Just got chills. I love
They age
that.
a bit, they age like 10 years, but actually 150, 200 years goes past. And so at the beginning, it's like 1500 and something, and they're in Venice, and Venice is so different to what it is now. It's like a real trade centre. It's amazing what's happening with the makers and the glass makers there and what they're doing. And then they skip forward a bit, and it's sort of Casanova's time. Then they skip forward a bit more, and at the very end, it's the same character, and she's now 65, and it's the same character that I listened to, because I'm listening to it, living in the 1500s and how the plague had affected them and how their life was so different. And now it's 2019 and she's talking to people on her phone and having conversations with her family with video calls, and she's going into the supermarket. Wow. And it was so weird that to kind of witness in one story with one character the difference between how her life was, and literally every decision, like you're saying, whole life completely different in the early parts of the book, through to the same character basically being, dropped in 2019 with the ability to travel and the technology and the different way of living. It's kind of sobering and a really forced, intense focus on what you've just said, that everything changes when that changes.
Yeah, I'm very intrigued by that. Did you enjoy the book? Would you recommend reading it?
Was brilliant.
How did you feel about the book?
Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, I've read 2 books on Venice recently. The first one was called The Instrumentalist, and it was actually a story of a woman who interacted with Vivaldi, basically. That's a short version of it. And that was a brilliant book. I loved it. And I was so intrigued learning so much about Venice and its historical, the journey of Venice and how it was when it was not a tourist town, before it was a tourist town. And so I saw this one come up and I thought, this is interesting. And again, this one, The Glass Blower, it's kind of, instead of being about music, it's about glass. But again, I've learned so much about Venice and so much about different histories and so much about the world of glass, and they're both of them absolutely brilliant. And this one, I just didn't want it to end. I was, what it's like, you get to a book and you're like, oh no, I love these characters so much. I want to spend more time with them,
Do you remember the author of that book? I know Daphne du Maurier wrote a book about the glass blowers, but
The Glass Blower is Tracy Chevalier.
Tracy Chevalier, okay.
Yeah, the first book, the Instrumentalist. I can't remember the lady's name. Again, it's a lady. But because I finished I only finished The Glass Blowers last night, and so the name's in my head. The Instrumentalist, I can't remember the lady's name, but if you look it up, there's only one book called The Instrumentalist about Venice in the 1600s.
Perfect.
It's fascinating, the history. Fascinating.
I love that.
Anyway, that's what I wanted to say about that. We can go to the questions now. We should do. Are you looking for kitchen inspiration? Perhaps you're fed up with trying to make the recipes you find online suit your family. Would you like to try the dishes that we make in our kitchens every day? Andrea and I have penned 3 cookbooks that are there to support you to make ancestral food come to life in your own home. Meals at the Ancestral Hearth, our first cookbook, has 20 foundational ancestral meals, all of which come directly from our kitchens. Spelt Sourdough Every Day is my baby, taking you through how to bake a myriad of delicious ancient grain goodies. And the Pastured Pork Cookbook shares our love of this often overlooked meat, with over 35 recipes featuring heritage pork, offal and lard. Each book costs just $12, or you can get all 3 for $30, saving you $6. And all of the funds go directly to keeping us on the air. Head to ancestralkitchenpodcast.com/shop and get cooking. I saw the questions. We have some really good ones. I wonder whether we should group the 2 ones about kind of going out, potlucks and toddlers together. Shall I read those 2 and then we'll dive in?
Yeah, why don't you read those?
Yeah, okay.
I'll be ready.
Okay, so they're both from Hannah. I think it's the same Hannah, but it might be a different Hannah because we've got lots of Hannahs. Okay, so she says, I would love to hear how you both handle potlucks and other events where you are sharing food with others and they're sharing with you. I never want to hurt people's feelings, but I also don't want my family regularly consuming things that I deem toxic to our health. That's the first question. And then a similar kind of question. I'm curious about balancing the desire to eat a certain way with social obligations. I'm a young mother of 2 toddlers, and we are very involved in our church and other community groups 3 to 4 times a week. However, I sometimes dread attending things because of the long tables of kid food, i.e. junk, that will inevitably be within my kids' grasp. I have tried to dissuade them, but it can sometimes cause a scene. How do you approach this, especially in toddler years where no is just hard for them? So difficult. I think this is one of the most difficult parts of living and eating this way. Brown children. It's so hard. I want to hear what you've got to say about it, Andrea.
Well, I do concur. And it is one of those things where it is just harder to do things now than it was in some times, and it is easier to do things now than it was in some other times. We have the advantage of an oven, so we can bake something if we have an idea of baking, an ancestral type food. But we have the difficulty of there being, we need those little conveniences because there is no culture that supports what we're doing right now. So Hannah if you're two different Hannahs. I hear you when I see you. I think this was easier for us to handle when we weren't as involved in going to things. Like Hannah said in the second question, we go 3 to 4 times a week. If you're doing this, if you're doing it 2 or 3 times a year, it's kind of like, we train them the best we can and you do what you can. But when it's 3 to 4 times a week, you got to have a strategy. This is hard. I don't know, because we don't go to a lot of potluck type things. For the most part, my kids at this point are old enough that I've told them, I really don't like, this isn't something that we eat in our family, or this isn't, and I've told them also, they're also old enough that I can say, please don't tell them, don't tell the person, I don't eat that kind of food, because I told them, when people make you something, or when they make something put on the table, even if they're using food that we don't feel is okay for us to eat, they're doing it with love in their heart and genuine kindness. They're not doing it out there like, hey, get those kids with these seed oils, So, it is not okay to be rude about it, even if we don't like it. But, I don't know. A lot of the people that we spend time around do eat this way. Like, just because it happens to be, the groups that we've kind of evolved. And then when we go, she's alluding to church and other community groups. I'm trying to think. We don't really go to potlucks. So for the most part, if you go somewhere, we are bringing food. And then when we go to church events, there really is usually a pretty good range of things. And you can kind of spy out the things. Like the kids will say, does this have dye in it? Because they know I'm just like, I'm really adamant about it. So like, does this have dye in it? And I'll say, yeah, I'm sure that has dye in it.
The problem is, if you've got a toddler, they're just going to grab whatever they're going to grab.
That's the thing. Yeah, and my 3 olders will probably be influential for my up-and-coming toddler, I'm guessing, because they'll say, oh, you're not supposed to have that, or they probably won't let him.
Yeah. So
I think, well, I will say the point that we're at now came about through an exhausting level of paying attention and constant dialogue, or as I call it, propagandizing the kids towards my way of thinking about food, and knowing that they can grow up and choose their own, they can choose what they want when they're out of my purview, if you will. But for now, I have to do the best by them that I know. And so I must choose for them what I feel like, according to the best that I know, is, that's not to say when they're 18, they're not going to grow up and go to some fast food place. That's their choice. But I hope that I can influence them at any rate. And for now, it seems like they also, you can help with dialoguing, hopefully. But I have found it helpful to say, how we feel like this after that. And start to make an association. And I remember there's a doctor out here, and he really, I think he wrote the book Dirty Genes. I think you've heard of him. I can't remember his name, but he talked about how, he taught his kids, and they're teenagers, like older teenagers now. He taught his kids, the best he could about food and everything. And his son went to like not like a wild party, but like a youth party type thing, and came back and had eaten all the junk food. And then the next day was like, I feel so sick. And he was like, oh yeah, eating food like that does that, huh? And he was like, at this point, I can't just preach at him. At this point, he has to start to draw his own conclusions.
Absolutely.
He has to have his own epiphanies. But that does start when they're toddlers. So also, Hannah, get a reputation. Like, make a reputation for yourself. I think I often was too timid about trying to get a reputation for being the crazy lady. But if you're really particular, people will say, oh, her kids don't don't eat that, or her kids, she doesn't let her kids eat that. And it's okay. Like, that's okay to have that reputation. So what do you think, Alison?
Oh, it's hard. I think whenever you're feeling down, Hannah, just remember that Andrea and I and everyone who's listening to the podcast and everyone who supports the podcast is with you, because, you know, we've all been there, and it's not difficult. I think I don't want to be antisocial, but Rob and I are both introverts, but we always are really choosy about the things that we go to. You know, when we're a bit more like you compared to Hannah, we're not going to things very often. And part of it is because we know when Gabriel was younger, there's just going to be rubbish food there. You know, and often we've gone to events where there's been food and we've just taken sandwiches and just gone off, you know, not like stood in front of everyone with the sandwiches, but we've gone to sit on a bench, you know, on the other side of the park, and we'll just eat our sandwiches. Then we'll get on with the rest of the event. But I think we in the past we've chosen to be selective about what we want to go to, because we've not wanted to expose ourselves or Gabriel to that. When we have gone to things like that, I always try to take something that I know that Gabriel would absolutely love, and yet is, you know, is good food.
Exactly.
And so he's familiar with that. He knows that, and so he's gonna, to some extent, gravitate towards that because it's the thing he likes. Now, you know, with toddlers, that's hard, because, you know, if there's some bright red things or some bright yellow things, they're gonna potentially reach for them. But to make sure you've always got something with you that they know and they love, and to steer them towards that in a way that's, you know, not ridiculously hypervigilant. And then I think, like you're saying, Andrea, it's kind of the long game to some extent, that, you know, if the kids have got an example of two parents who are eating really well, and the kids are eating well at home, and they see that their parents are completely happy with the way they're eating and not thinking, actually, I want that thing over there, or I want that thing over there, then they're going to have the best example of sane food choices. And, you know, what you were saying about that author, and we've watched that happen with Gabriel. I remember one particular party that we went to in Florence. It was one of the boys at his class, one of his birthday parties. I think Gabriel must have been about 9, maybe. And we went to the other side of Florence to this park, and Italians do an amazing spread for kids' birthday parties in parks. And I'm trying not to, you know, be hypervigilant and watch Gabriel, because we're trying to, you know, we were trying to give him the space to make his own mistakes. This is harder when it's toddlers, but like you said, there is still some awareness there. And Gabriel ate way too much, and, you know, foods that he's not used to, and foods, and literally by the end of the party, he was feeling so sick, and Rob had to carry him on his shoulders halfway across Florence to get to the train.
Oh my gosh. And
he was just like, oh, I feel so awful. And the next day he felt so awful, and we were like, well, it's the food, you know? And you know, it's happened again since then, but not to that extent.
Yeah.
Because he knows what he did, and he doesn't.
Well, and some of us need more lessons and harder.
The other thing that I didn't say was, I wonder if there's any way you can steer the food that is being prepared. Now, if it's potlucks, it's hard because you can only bring what you bring. But if it's a catered event where the church are putting on food themselves, you know, then is there a way you can talk to someone or volunteer to take over the food preparation? In that way, making perhaps one of those events a bit easier, because doing that, then you talk to the rest of the parents there, and they're not going to all want their kids eating, you know, terrible food. So you'll probably enthuse some of them if you're able to present foods that are a healthy choice and yet still kid good. So
this is why we need T-shirts, Alison, and sweatshirts. That's Ancestral Kitchen Podcast.
So people ask.
If everybody's listening, will influence slowly.
Oh, we're talking about T-shirts. Yeah, I was at the market on the Saturday before last, and I just thought I should have a sweatshirt with this on. Why have I not got one? Anyway, that's a slight aside. But I
don't have one because it's impossible.
Yeah,
but
we'll get there.
I on what you said about bringing Gabriel good food, I was going to say that is definitely a strategy of mine, and a strategy when I've talked about that when we talked about going on vacation, is I intentionally bring the food. I mean, it obviously it's more work and it's not always very easy, and potlucks are supposed to be something that takes the load off. And so for us, sometimes it just makes it harder.
Yes.
But I do try to bring something that maybe I don't usually make. Like you said, it's still good. It's still something that is in our normal food, but it's a little bit beyond my normal effort, maybe. And that does help, because it's no good to walk a kid past this glorious spread and then like, now chew on this dry crust. Like, nobody wants that. So I want them to feel as spoiled as possible.
Because it's a fun time for them, and everyone else is there having fun, so they should have something that's nice too. I agree.
Admit to being very pleased when we went to a potluck and there was these kind of like box pizzas served, and my kids, half of them wouldn't eat it because they're like, I don't want that, I don't like that, and then the other half they ate it, and then they're on the way home, they're like, can we please eat some real food? I'm so hungry. That didn't make me and I was like, but that I also, when we've attended church things, I've contacted the people who are running it, and I say, hey, what can I bring? I'll bring little drinks for the kids or whatever, because there will usually be like Capri Suns, which is, I don't know if you've seen those, but
yes, I have.
There's a lot going on there. And so I'll offer to bring something that, yes, an organic fruit kids juice is still not going to be my number one pick, but I'm going to bring that to the party because I would rather the kids drink one of those than, the Capri Sun. And if I can make that choice, I know that it will be acceptable to the group. But like you said, if you can change the food culture just a little bit, and I've been thinking hard and long about that, how I can not just for my own sake of ease, but for the sake of the longevity of the group. For people to live a long time and not feel unwell. For that sake alone, I want to help influence the food that happens in the events. And I've been thinking about what I can do on that regards. I've been thinking about starting, like we talked about, teaching classes there at the church, just to start engaging in the food discussion. And I know that will begin to make an influence. And also, there may be, Hannah, and you don't know yet, or they don't know, because maybe you're, we just, food is weird, because I tried for too long, I think, to be really subtle and to be like, okay, I don't like a big deal out of it. Like that's, and now I'm like, I'm just going to be the weird one. Like, you're just going to have to know it. But if there is one other mom, it makes it easier. And there is one other mom who, she brings her own weird little snacks. Her kids say, or people will say, oh, don't give those to her kids. They're not allowed to have dyes. And I'm like, actually, I want that reputation too. Like, I like that. Instead of just having the kids bring them to me and I like stuff them down the side of my seat so that nobody sees, like, I'm going to everybody be like, oh yeah, Andrea's kids, they don't get that. Like, we know. So if there's one other person, it does make it easier.
Yes, so, I agree. Yeah.
Hence
I hope
podcast.
that helps. I hope that helps. And I think an important thing is to, even if it goes belly up, to try not to get just into a spiral of kind of frustration and anger yourself, because that never helps the situation. And I know I'm talking to myself when I'm saying that, because
listen to Marcus
hard.
Talking about the guilt. Marcus talking about that, like how it's that I have a lot of thoughts. It was so good. But that private podcast episode that you and him put out was, I feel like, there's a lot there. We could have a KTC just talking about that episode.
I could have stayed talking to him for several days.
I know. I wish you had, because I would be listening to that content right now. But at any rate, just making it an emotional nightmare for yourself is also difficult.
Yeah.
But also talk about food from a sensitivity side. Like when people say, like instead of saying, my kids aren't allowed to eat those candies, then I say, they're really sensitive to them and they don't do well and they don't feel well. People are more respectful of that than just, the fact that dyes give you cancer.
Yeah.
So if you say, oh yeah, we just don't do well with that, so we're not able to have it. And I also will say things like, sometimes they still want it, so it's best to just not show it to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's okay too.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you. And I hope that helps, Hannah.
I hope so.
Hey, you washing the dishes. Been there. You've heard Alison and I talk over and over about her love of rye sourdough bread. Well, I might actually call it an obsession, but that's neither here nor there. Now you can make Alison's rye sourdough in your own kitchen with her as your teacher. And she's a really good teacher. Rye is economical, it's delicious, and full of nutrients and low in gluten. There's a reason why it has been a darling of bread bakers for centuries. Make it into sourdough, as Alison will show you in her course, Rye Sourdough Bread, Mastering the Basics. And you've got an amazing, tasty, and nutritious staple in your kitchen. It's traditional and it's nutritional. In this course, you'll learn everything there is to know about how she creates and maintains her rye sourdough starter, all about whole grain sourdough rye, including the key differences between baking with rye and wheat, how to make 2 loaves, an everyday rye sandwich bread, and a delicious Russian-style dark rye loaf, and what to do with your sourdough discard, including video walkthroughs for sourdough pancakes and a tasty, sweet, spiced cake. Head to www.ancestralkitchen.com/rye.
All right, I'm going to read this quote, Alison, to transition us into the next. Okay, so Leah sent me this quote from a book. I sent it to Alison. Alison said, why don't we read this on the KTC? So here we are. Leah's reading this book called wow. She's reading this book called Against the Machine by Paul Kingsnorth. And she's got she's got like entire communities of people reading it now. So Leah is what we call a book influencer. Brittney has been buying copies to like hand out to people at this point. It's like a tract for her. She's like, here, Rage Against the Machine with me. But it's, I have not read the book yet. I bought the book and I think we are starting read along as a podcast, Alison, in January. We already have a thread for it, and there is already some discussion happening because Leah also listened to a talk from this guy, and then she's shared some quotes.
Is he famous over your side of the Atlantic?
I don't know,
because I looked him up, and he's written novels. He's been a columnist.
Yeah.
He's really got... Because I was like, how did he get a platform with such a major publisher saying what he's saying? Because the major publishers kind of don't want to say this, but he's quite well established. I mean, like, seriously, he's got a following. So I'm surprised we hadn't heard of him before.
Well, okay, I had heard of him in the sense that I had heard his name, but I couldn't have told it to you if you'd asked me.
Okay.
And I didn't even remember that I'd heard his name, but he's been discussed multiple times in different circles that I'm in, different books of his.
I see. Okay.
And I don't want to get his story wrong, but I think that he converted to Christianity at some point in the last few years. And his books are still written to like the general audience. You know, it's not like somebody has to be a Christian to read his books, just like you didn't have to not be a Christian to read his books before.
Yes.
But I think for some reason that gave him some kind of a, I don't know, maybe it connected a dot for him on maybe more transcendent side of things. I have no idea. This is a question for Leah. But at any rate, she has sent me some amazing quotes and I've been forwarding them on to you and we're both enjoying them. So here's one that he said. And one reason why I haven't read his book yet, Alison, is I told Leah, everything you're sending me, I feel like is something Alison and I have said on the podcast. And I want to like keep writing a little bit more before I read his book, because I feel like if his book had come out before some of the things I've said, people would think I was plagiarizing him. But I said them before he wrote the book, so it was just my ideas, or the ideas that have grown around me that I shared about. And so that's part of the reason why. But in episode 100, I feel like we said this very well.
Yes.
But here's a quote from Against the Machine. My point is not that women should get back into the kitchen, but that we all should. And into the other rooms of the home, too. Machine modernity prized the men away from the home first, as the Industrial Revolution broke their cottage industries and swept them into the factories and mines, where their brute strength could be useful to the machine. Later, the women, who had been mostly left to tend the home single-handedly, were subject to the same liberation, which was sold to them as a blow struck against inequality. Perhaps it was, but it was also a blow struck against the home for both sexes. It's a fascinating quote.
I read it to Rob because very often in the last couple of years, and particularly when we were reading, there's a book which...
the feminism book?
Yeah, the feminism book. I've completely forgotten what it's called. Feminism Against something. I've forgotten. We have talked about it on Discord. And Rob's heard me talk a lot about women's role in the kitchen and how that's been lost and that's been lost. And he's seen me do the research on ale and seen me do all this other research and seen all the things we've talked about. And he said to me, the men feel further away from it. Perhaps women feel what's happened to them because they're closer to it. It's not as long since they've been torn away from the kitchen,
Agreed.
And he said, but the men were taken away too. And the way Rob and I work, we're both at home, and Rob's doing stuff. Like I said, Rob's getting the bread out of the oven. He's checking the bread. He helped me with the bread this morning when I was upstairs doing something else. He's part of our kitchen mechanics. It wouldn't work. The whole thing wouldn't work without him. He's there. And the men used to be there too, doing things in the home. And it feels closer for us to say, we should value women's work. We should value what women used to do. But he feels himself like, well, men used to do this too. Just because they were taken out of the home, 150 years before women. But they're supposed to be part of it. It's supposed to be about a unit together running a home. And I read him the quote and he was just like, that's exactly what I say when I talk to you about it. But he said it so much better.
That's what I'm saying is like this book, that's why I'm like I said, I'm almost afraid to read it, because I feel like every time I bump into a quote Leah sends me, I'm like, did you know we have an episode about that? Or like I literally emailed Alison that 4 days ago or something. And it's exactly what Rob said. And this guy's, it's almost like shocking to see it articulated somewhere, because you didn't realize anybody else was thinking about it. But like Marcus said too, well, I thought I had this original idea, and then I found a book written about it in 1996.
And it's not just that someone else is thinking about it; it's that someone else who's actually done a lot of writing and is quite well known and has had a book published about it by one of the major publishers who usually tell ideas like this where to go. It's incredible.
It is shocking.
Yeah.
And I so agree with Rob. And I think that that's part of why the feminism message and this like trad wife trend in the US and stuff, I feel like it's also garbled, because people are like, see, we're putting women back in the home where they really belong. And then the feminists are like, wait, but you have the choice, and that's because of feminism or whatever. And it's like, no, everybody, all of you are wrong. Everybody's wrong. Like we all belonged here. And there's a lot negative we could say about the Puritans. Let's just put it that way. But the Puritans left us some interesting really fascinating stuff in terms of like poetry and letters and things that they've written, where you do see these really vivid images of a man and a woman kind of owning their domain of their home. And like you and Rob, producing from within their home the things that sustain their family, and maybe that they trade or barter or sell off, for the wider gain of their property. But yeah, this is a fascinating.
It's reminding me
fascinated
of
to read the book.
Shannon Hayes' book, Radical Homemakers. It's a classic now. It's a long time ago, but that I remember her interviewing people, couples, and them talking about this kind of thing. I remember the name of that book now. It's Feminism Against Progress.
Okay. And I remember you shared some really interesting tidbits from that book.
It's a disturbing book, but a very, very good book. I know that
disturbing.
That some of
the best books are disturbing.
Some of the supporters have read it, but I mean, it's just amazing, and I'm looking forward to the read along that we're going to do. If people are listening and they are not on Discord, we will try to make sure that we put the read along information kind of out on an email to all supporters too. So if you
good idea,
don't want
Alison,
to come
I'm
into
making
Discord,
a note to make a post. You do an email, I'll do a post in WordPress, where I'll just note to it. And if you're listening and you aren't on Discord, if you can get on, it is really, really nice to be able to get in there and discuss these things with people. And it isn't a social media, so you're not going to see the faces of everybody. You will only see the people who have basically
joined us,
like you, if you're listening to this, and they also paid to support the podcast. So it's going to be a more limited audience.
What we
it's
should
not like,
also
look,
do,
my high school teacher.
What we should also do is make a new section in the podcast bookstore online, called read-alongs or something, and we should put that
Alison,
book
into
the bookstore.
Okay.
It's bookshop.org, our own affiliate kind of thing, which means that you don't go to Amazon, and a percentage goes to local bookstores, and we get a tiny kind of kickback as well if you buy something on there.
Can you do the UK side, Alison?
Yeah, I will.
The US side.
I will.
Okay, I'm just making a note of that.
Yeah, I'm interested to read it with everyone, and I said to Rob, can we read it together? And we looked at how much it was and what format we're going to buy it in. Do we want it electronically, or do we want the actual hard? Because it's only hardback at the moment. I couldn't see a paperback.
Yeah.
And so I'm also interested because although both Rob and I are very spiritual, we're not particularly affiliated with any specific religion. Right. So I'm interested to see how that translates to how we feel about that side of our life and our souls as well, which will be
I'm
interesting.
curious to hear how it reads for you also, because I've been told that it's everybody can enjoy it. So but that's yet to be seen, as you haven't given me a review. And it's one of those books where it's new, and so really you can only buy new copies unless you happen to see one someone had just dropped off at a bookstore. So it is kind of a more expensive version of a read along than you might otherwise normally have.
Yeah, it might be in the library. I think maybe some libraries might have it, but I doubt I've got it here.
I think a number of people in the group here were saying that they requested their libraries to buy it.
Yeah. I used to be able to do that in Cornwall. I used to be able to say, please buy this book. And then like 3 weeks later, I'd get an email saying, we've bought it. And I was like, oh, crikey, they used to buy all these books because I asked. But now in Gloucestershire, they kind of don't do that. You just send off a form and it goes into the middle of nowhere, and you never hear again whether they ever got it or so. I'm not really, I've stopped doing that now.
Well, there's the machine. That's exactly what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Do you love oats? Want to try your hand at a traditional Scottish oat fermentation? Suhan's is just that. It was made in Scotland for centuries and will give you both a creamy, easy-to-digest porridge and a tangy probiotic drink. My video course, Suhan's, the Scottish Oat Ferment, over at the Fermentation School, will guide you through everything you need to know to create these two ancestral foods in your own kitchen, no matter what equipment you have. Head to ancestralkitchen.com/Sewans, ancestralkitchen.com/Sewans, SOWANS, or click the link in the show notes to get a 10% discount automatically applied.
Okay, I'm going to read a question.
Okay.
I think I'm going to read this one from Ella because it kind of connects to what we talked about with Hannah's questions. This is from Ella. She said, I'm wondering if you have ideas for getting kids used to ancestral food. My husband and I are working on getting licensed to hopefully adopt from foster care and would like some advice on helping kids adjust to a different way of eating.
Wow.
This is a complicated one because I also will say when you're working in foster care, the kids coming into your home, I mean, there's all varying degrees of what they've been exposed to, but they are separated from their family, obviously, by being placed somewhere. And so there is trauma. And immediately then taking away perhaps the only sense of continuity they might have, which is, the brand of macaroni they like or something, might not be a good thing to start out with. And so I feel like that's probably sounds contrary coming after what I just said about the potlucks. But taking, I'm going to refer to the Marcus episode again when he talked about like this nutrient and that nutrient, but you have to look at the whole thing. So you can look at this aspect of the kid and that aspect of the kid, but you have to look at the whole child as well. And if you have a child who is, 7 and like sleeping under their bed because of fear, my sister worked with kids like that, where they would go to check on them at night and they were sleeping under the bed because that was the only way they felt safe.
That's going to be.
I get that. I know that I want to get the nutrients into them, but we have to take into account the whole child, the entire limbic system, and just the big picture needs to be looked at. So whatever you do, I would do it the most gently and thoughtfully, and I wouldn't get upset if the child cannot adjust to your new way. Like I wouldn't use that as a reason to get upset or frustrated. Because also these kids may or may not have any sense of control in their life. And considering that, and then you tell them what they can put on their plate, that could do a different kind of damage. So maybe the child stays in your home and they eat things that you're like, I could never. And it might feel like you're being unkind to the child. But if you can put the other good things around them and expose them and mix them in where it's possible and whatnot, thinking about the long game, that child may grow and say, there was this family I stayed with, and, they're either going to say, they're horrible. Like they didn't let me eat anything that I liked. I know it wasn't good, but they didn't let me eat it. And they just force fed me liver and they didn't let me have potato chips or whatever. But if they're like, they always had the most interesting things on the table. And I never ate them, but I looked at them. And now as an adult, I'm interested. We just have to think about the long game and the aspects of trauma that they've gone through to get to the point where they're in your home. So that is a thought just that I want to lay on the table right out of the gate with this.
Yeah. Ella doesn't say how long.
How old.
Or how old.
Yeah.
And I think those two things are quite important. I know she's on Discord, so do feel free to come and, discuss it further if you want to afterwards, Ella, because I think it depends on, if you're having a child for a number of years, that's very different than having a child just for a couple of months. And if the child's 2, that's very different than a child who's, 11. So it's...
And a child who's staying with you for a week or like emergency weekends or something is very different than a child that's integrating with your family for maybe the next decade.
Yeah.
So...
Completely. If Ella was taking children who were going to stay with her for a longer amount of time, then I feel like, it depends so much on who that child is, and what they're interested in. Because for a child who's likes doing stuff in the kitchen, a great way to get them involved is to get them involved in the kitchen, to move them forward, to get them involved in the kitchen and to work out what they really like to eat.
Almost.
Yeah, work out what they really like and see if you can tweak one thing in that thing they really like.
Or maybe tell them, did you know we can make Pop-Tarts? Let's make Pop-Tarts at home. Just make it fun and interesting. And preferably I'm going to make note of that book Leah also shared with us called The Happy Dinner Table. Like, don't pitch a fit if they pitch a fit, be the adult in the room.
I feel like, there are ways to make things like, if the child likes soups, for example, a particular type of soup, there's a way you can use proper broth in there instead of using a cube in that. And even if that's the only thing that they're doing, if they love, I don't know, Gable loves carrot and coriander soup, but if they just love one particular soup, then
chicken noodle soup,
then exactly, you can just use proper broth in it rather than a cube. It might be that they're used to the taste of the cubes, so it becomes hard then. But there are ways. I know that I've talked to people who whose kids like noodles, like you said, and they've, instead of getting the one where you just pour boiling water on and it rehydrates, they've actually tried to make the noodles, with a bit of miso or a bit of tahini and chopped leftover meat and really good noodles. And potentially you can try to mimic some of the other dishes with better ingredients in, or making cookies with like butter instead of some horrible oil in.
Instead of Crisco,
but it depends on the individual child and getting them involved. If they want to get involved, that's even better. But it's hard to know until you've got that actual child with you, I think,
Yeah. I think I would be prepared for all eventualities. And also Cindy Rollins, who we've talked about on the podcast before, she has a podcast called The New Mason Jar with Cindy Rollins. And it's more focused on homeschool, but she has 9 kids. I think it's 9, so they're not foster kids, but so it's a different kind of experience, but it is experience with children nonetheless. And one of her most helpful pieces of advice that I heard was, she said, be impervious and ignore initial bluster. So when they're just like falling apart, you just think, sometimes I have to repeat to myself, I'm impervious. Be impervious to the bluster. And then when they're initially saying, I won't do it, I shan't, then you just kind of ignore that, because, like they're kind of expressing themselves and their independence or whatever you want to say. And then they'll probably carry on and, maybe do the task I had for them or whatever. But she is right.
I feel like you're talking to me there. It's just, Gabriel is just like, he is initial bluster. He just is. All the time.
Yes.
Like,
Very much so.
we had a task to read a second chapter of a kind of a history book ready for the group that he goes to on a Thursday. And he was like initially, no, I'm not going to sit and listen to you. No, I'm not going to do No, I'm not doing it. All the initial bluster. And then I read the first bit when we were at Rob's mum's. And then I read the second half on the train on the way home yesterday, just me and him. Yeah. He was like having a rest and lying on my lap. And we actually got chatting about the different stone tools, how they were different in the Paleolithic compared to the Neolithic, and how they would have cooked. And it was really, he was really interested in it. But gosh, initial bluster, and I think her advice is so good. Just ignore the initial bluster, because otherwise you'd be just like, oh, I can't do this. No, I'm not doing it. It's just too much.
Yeah. And but you throw the book down and you say, you know what? I won't either. And then you just, I would never, of course, never succumb to this, Alison, me being so perfect as I am. But then you turn into the child and you're like, fine, then we won't. I'm not going to read it to you. Yeah. that never goes well.
No.
But I guess I would take those things to heart. I would, be impervious and ignore initial bluster. And I think your thought on the broth is a good one, Alison. Like, we do not have to start out with fried liver and onions, but if you make, like you said, something they like or are familiar with, and you're just sneaking, I hate that word, but you're just gently incorporating aspects that you know are a little bit better, but not going to throw their nervous system into chaos and feel spiraling, then that's worth doing. And I'll bet there's a lot you could do. And thinking too about Hillary Boynton, who we interviewed on the podcast actually a couple of years ago now, and how she said her thinking behind getting really good school lunches was, if I can get one good meal a day into these kids, that's 7, or not 7, I guess 5 meals a week.
Yeah.
And then snacks on top of it. So it's like 10,
Yeah.
And I remember being just so amazed at how much value she was giving to, well, look, even if the kids are eating junk at home, they're getting this one good meal a week. So, and thinking, yeah, you know what? Like, that would make a difference. It doesn't always have to be all or nothing. Like, I am an all or nothing person, and I want it to be all or nothing. But if I can say at least they got the broth in, that was something, working them towards, mental goal that I might have, a step in the direction, still has value, even if I didn't convert them on day one or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Congratulations, Ella.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you are getting licensed. That's a really big deal, you and your husband. So thank you for what you're doing for
important work.
Children and families everywhere. So, so important. So valuable.
Okay. We've got another question, haven't we? Do you want me to read that one?
I have a question and a comment from Brittney.
Go on, you read it then.
She told it to me. She sent it to me in a voicemail, so I'll tell you what she said. I wrote down kind of in Breve, but she said, so she's taking your rye course and your boza course, and I think your chocolate course and your Suins course.
Just everything I've ever done.
She messaged me and she said, I started watching Alison's rye course. I just have to say, I just love her. Everything she does, she clearly researches to the nth degree. And then she asked me, how did you two meet? And have you ever met in person? And I think we get asked this pretty frequently. So we should probably answer this one.
Do you want to do the... I'm going to make up some story about how we bumped into each other.
You know what? We need a better story.
Yeah.
It was a club, Alison. We were in a club. It was dark.
Exactly. I fell over.
No, you got dizzy and you had to sit down, and I had POTS, so I had to sit down, and we were both sitting on the curb together. Yeah. And Rob was playing music. That's how it happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, actually, it was on Instagram, and Rob did point this out the other day. As I heard you mention to Marcus on the episode that I will never stop referencing. But you were saying how, phones, burn them. And Rob said, well, if it wasn't for Instagram, you would never have met Andrea. Yeah. And you wouldn't be recording a podcast, which is, thanks, Rob. Such a great point.
Yeah.
So you were posting, you had just gotten back onto Instagram. I literally think you had 7 followers when I found your account. And you have thousands now.
Oh,
but you were posting.
I don't know. I haven't been on there for 2.5 years. I don't know.
We wouldn't know. You were posting something that you called cook-ups? Cook-alongs?
Yeah, cook-alongs. Cook-ups. Yeah, cook-ups. I remember now.
Cook-ups. Yeah, I think it was cook-ups. And they were really good. So you would post like a recipe, and then you would say, or you could put in this, or you could put in this, or you could put in this, or you could do this, or you could leave that out, or you could try this, or you could try that. And I thought, wow, she cooks how I cook. And I feel like you just don't see that online. Everybody's like, I only use these type of green beans, and I only use 3 grams, because if you do any more than that, it's just a little bit too much. It's not French anymore. But you were just like, I mean, whatever you have, what's in season in your region, everybody, wherever you are, cook this stew and then send me a picture and like, we'll talk about it. And I was like, oh, hello, Becca. Hi. And I just loved that. So then we kind of started chatting on Instagram, and And then I remember sitting on the edge of the bed in our new house reading message from you, and you said, have you ever thought about doing a podcast? And would you want to do one together? And I remember thinking, this is probably one of those things that will turn out to be a lot more work than it seems like at the outset.
Yes.
And then I thought,
premonition was correct.
And then I thought, I'm going to really regret it for the rest of my life if I say no. And I said, yes.
You haven't told me that bit before.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well,
I think
that premonition is probably also correct. I just thought about the future of my life and like what I'm doing and what's the point of this. And like, I'm in my kitchen, and I already had the bitter taste of Instagram in my mouth a little bit, and it didn't feel like a real future for me. And you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've got all the main facts in place for sure. You did when I had only been on Instagram for a little while. I know that, and I did the cook-ups, and then you did a kind of a hashtag challenge thing, very farmish.
Oh yeah.
And you asked me if I wanted to kind of be part of it. I remember thinking, oh gosh.
Was that before the podcast?
Yeah, that was before the podcast. Yeah, that was.
Oh wow.
And I remember thinking, oh, can I really be on Instagram that much? I've kind of taken away from it because I kind of cut away from it from my previous business, and I've been off it for like 2.5 years or 3 years or something. And I was a bit like, oh, is it going to get me on Instagram too much? Am I going to get sucked back in? And anyway, I did it, and it was fine because you were like, oh no, just post when you want to. It doesn't matter. And then it was as if you were kind of sent by some kind of all-knowing angel, because I'd wanted to do a podcast for such a long time, and I kept looking on my podcast app thinking there must be a podcast. I mean, there just must be. And every few months I'd look on my app. There must be a podcast about this. I mean, come on, there must be someone who's cooking this way. And there's just nothing. And I'd listen to other food podcasts and I'd be like, no, well, why don't you talk about that a bit more? And they never did. And we just moved to Florence, and I remember going into the bedroom. I think I've told you this story before, saying to Rob, I'm going to just record myself and see how I sound, because I really want to do this podcast thing. And I went into the bedroom and I shut the door and I recorded myself, and I listened to it, and I was just cringing, because it's always bad when you listen to your own voice. But on top of that, I thought, this is just, I need someone to bounce off. I can't do this by myself. I need someone to share, and I'll talk about what they've talked about, and they can talk about what I've talked about, and it will just be like a conversation rather than just me talking about something, to no one. And I remember being so frustrated and saying to Rob, it just sounds rubbish. I can't do it. I need someone else, and I don't know anyone else. What am I going to do? And he's like, oh, just wait. If it's meant to be, it will come to fruition. And then it did, because you just appeared. And I thought, hang on, this is this person that I could talk to. I want to know more about what she's doing in her kitchen. It looks really interesting. So why don't we just talk about it? And yeah, that's when I sent you that message. Which
how does Rob always know?
Oh,
we're over it.
It's so,
how does he always know?
I don't know. It's so frustrating sometimes. Why did I not know?
Well, never tell him. Rob, never read this transcript.
No, exactly. We won't tell him.
As a podcast pair, I feel like we are a good pair in so many ways, and not the least of which that you have a British accent and I have an American accent.
Yes.
And so when you listen to us talk, it's very clear who is talking.
Yes, I know. And I've listened to podcasts with pairs before, and I'm like, who are they? And because I can't tell them apart, I never really gel with their names quite as well than a pair I can tell apart.
Yeah, you don't get their kind of identity.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. So I think that works out pretty well. And then we both have, you're in town.
Yeah.
So you can kind of give the perspective of doing this in town.
Yeah.
I'm in the countryside.
Yeah.
So I can kind of give the perspective from that side.
Yeah.
Then you're European.
Yeah.
I'm American. So there's that contrast.
You have big family. I have small family.
Yeah. You've got one son and I've got the 4 kids at this point now.
And you're like, hey, everything will be okay. And I'm like, oh, it's going wrong. And so that balances it out.
Hey, are you talking about the business side of things? Or are you talking about the food?
I don't know. Both, maybe.
You're like, okay, I'm going to do this episode 3 months from now. I wrote the notes. Give them a look. They're in the thing. And I'm like, literally, I don't know. I don't know how my brain works, but my brain, like it turns it over and over and over and over. And like if I write it down too early, it's like premature. It's like
so you're working on it in the background kind of thing.
It happens and it happens. And unfortunately for everybody else.
Yeah. They're like, has she done anything? What's going on?
Yeah. And then the night before we recorded, I think at 10 o'clock at night, I was like, it's ready. And like, I sat down and I wrote the entire milk episode in like 20 minutes.
It's like
and
having
then in the morning, you just had to see the notes. Yeah, it is. But unfortunately, I do feel bad because you like to be able to look in advance. I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to like move that mental birth date like up sooner because my brain kind of relies on that little
I don't understand
spike.
the differences in our personalities, what drives them, because I hate last minute things. I just go into an absolute kind of panic if there's any deadline in the future at all. I just want it done immediately because I don't like deadlines hanging over my head. And if I got to the night before and I hadn't written it, I would just, I don't know, I'd be in a panic. It's like when I was at college, some of my friends stayed up all night, the night before writing their essays. Whereas I'd written the essay, a week before, the 2 days after we got the title for it, I was done, and I couldn't cope with your way of being, and you wouldn't be able to do my way of being, and
so weirdly school. Well, school didn't feel like it. Like a lot of it was not really inspiration based. Like if you have to do math homework, you do math homework.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I was always early with assignments.
Oh, were you?
I didn't.
Oh gosh.
I didn't really feel that. Maybe stories, like when I did creative writing, maybe those would come closer to the core. But I don't know. With the things that they don't require some like really elemental part of my spirit in them. That's no problem getting that done early. So that's weird. I don't know. I never really thought about it until you said that just now.
I do need cogitating time, like this pork episode that we're getting ready for January. What I usually do is I think about it for a bit, and I think about the structure and how it might be, and then I wait a few days, and then I come back to it and I read something that's relevant to it, and then I wait a few days, and then I come back to it and I add some stuff on. So it's not like I'm not cogitating. I'm just cogitating in a different way. I think maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just interesting.
Your depth of thought in things, as Brittney has so astutely picked up on, your depth of thought. I know because I end up seeing little aspects of your creative process as we go along something. And so I see how long, this pork episode is, in a way, it's been years in the making, but certainly in the practical side of really crafting the episode, you've been doing it for a long time, and it's not even coming out until, 2 months from now or whatever. So it's not like you're just like slapdash, not at all. If anything, I feel like you think about things more, but
I don't know.
it just emerges differently.
Yeah, it does. And it's interesting that, there's ups and downs that come with that, because we've both had to get used to the way we each individually are, but there's also benefits that come from that big time, because
that's true.
We've both had different approaches when it comes to business strategies and ideas and kind of inputs for how we could move the podcast forward, or ideas for the books that we've done and other stuff like that. So if it had just been a carbon copy of me being my partner, then the podcast wouldn't be what it is. And if it had just been a carbon copy of you as your partner,
be no podcast.
the podcast wouldn't be what it is.
It'd be like 3 episodes. They'd be really good, but that's where it would end.
So whoever decided that, just whoever kind of nudged my shoulder and said, why don't you contact Andrea, had some wisdom, I think.
Well, whoever was nudging you was nudging me back, because I felt that, like you called it a premonition or whatever, jokingly, but kind of felt that sense of, this is something really significant. Like, this isn't just a, let's do this hashtag on Instagram thing. This was more like a marriage proposal in a way.
Yeah.
Like more serious and more commitment involved. And I knew that it wasn't going to just be, an hour a month or something.
Yeah.
I was like, I know I'm not agreeing to just dip my toe in. Like, and this is the way I am with everything. Like, if I'm doing this, I am definitely doing this.
Yeah.
Like, this is
all
happening.
or nothing, like you said earlier.
Yeah. As you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too.
Call back to something. Oh, by the way, have we ever met in person?
Oh, no.
Other than in the club.
No. Oh, no. Apart from that one night.
Although I do think we met in a dream once. Do you remember, Alison?
Yes.
Because I had a dream about you and that you were coming to meet me. And I was so surprised that you came here. And I told you, we had like this long hug and it just felt so good. And you had dreamed that you were like running to the airport.
Yes.
I just thought it was so crazy. I was like, what? Did we just like meet in dreams? Like,
weird.
This is wild.
Hey, weird. So
funny.
We will meet, I think. And I don't know which way it's going to go, whether it will be over here or over there. Because you never know what's going to happen.
I really want to come to England.
Well, that's the point.
And you don't particularly want to fly.
I don't particularly want to come to the States. Although I think if Chelsea Green say yes to my book, they might try to persuade me. And, there's not just that over that side of the Atlantic. There's the idea that potentially I could meet up with you at the same time, which
that's true,
is appealing. But I still don't want to get on a plane. So we'll see.
No, it's a lot. I was going to call back to when you said that you were looking for podcasts and you kept thinking there's got to be somebody out there doing this. And this is something, if you go back and listen to anybody listening to this, goes back to the November KTC Live that we just did. So it just came out last month. Then we talked about how, you're looking for somebody doing something and they're talking about it all historically. And then they say, and then we just do this modern way now because, everybody has a microwave. So we just put it in the microwave. And Rachel was texting me and she said she heard this really interesting, I don't know what it was, podcast, essay, something talking about the Sumerians and how they made this very traditional bread. And this is how it was done. And we have all this evidence of it. And then they made it with white flour.
Yay!
And she was like, what? I know. That's what I said. I said, that is exactly how it feels. Everywhere you look, everybody says, oh no, the machine, it really has us. Well, I guess that's our fate now.
Yeah, let's just use yeast from a packet.
It's always the yeast. So
is that the Rachel who was sitting around the table with you on the mum chats that went out last month? I'm halfway through listening to that, and I've been thoroughly enjoying it. Yeah, exactly. It took me some time to get that far. It was so nice to imagine you kind of sitting around chatting and passing the mic round, and so good to have lots of different perspectives on the same topic, and the fact that some of the family, like Kirsten's family from Canada, is very much smaller, and some of the families are much, much bigger. Again, it's that kind of contrast of perspectives. It was really engaging. So if you're listening and you haven't listened to last month's kind of KTC, it was a chat that Andrea did round the table with lots of people who either support the podcast or are just generally eating and living this way. And so go back and have a look at that one.
And it was on that KTC. It was that weekend, actually. Everybody who's on there was camping out here for the whole weekend. And I was thinking about that when we were reading Hannah's questions. Because something, I don't know if we said this on the KTC or if it was just a discussion that we had, but something everybody said was the bizarre relaxation or letting down of their guard. They felt that there was nothing to really avoid. Like the food was all top notch.
Perfect.
You know what I'm saying? And
you don't say, no one's going to look at you strangely if you say a certain thing.
Yes. And I did say this on the episode. We had a family out here where there are some really unique dietary needs. Like, Jack, who can't have apples
and coconut oil,
can't have nuts, and can't have coconut, and can't have dairy, and can't have gluten. And, so it's not that every single person could eat every single thing, but there was the food was all so basic that he could pick from everything and take whatever worked for him. And we just didn't even bring butter down. We just used lard for everything.
Okay.
So by default, everything was dairy free. And so then we knew if he wanted it, he could take it. If he didn't want it, he didn't have to take it. It didn't really matter. We were all happy with it. And it was kind of surreal, like almost one of those things where you don't know how much of a strain you're under until the strain is lifted.
Absolutely. It felt like that when I met up with Fiona and Amelia and Jen and Nicole at Fiona's place last year. It was being in the kitchen together that made me realise that. It's just the idea of, well, everything that we're preparing in here, everyone is going to enjoy. There's no, what oil are you using, or what you're putting in that dressing, or how much sugar you're putting in that.
Good and
it was just so surreal. You sort of had to pinch yourself to think, well, we're all just making really good food. It's just like you don't realise until you go in a situation where it's okay, what it's like and what strain you were under, just like you said, in other environments.
I really want to encourage everybody to listen to the episode you did with Marcus and then follow up with it's almost a full nother podcast episode. It's like 40 minutes that you put on the private podcast, because I felt like he pulled on so many of our theses of the entire podcast.
Yes, absolutely.
Just in his discussion of cacao. And one thing that struck me was actually something I had specifically said to Leah maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. She and Brittney and I were talking, and Leah had gotten rid of her smartphone and she got like a dumb phone.
Yeah.
And she was saying, I feel like I'm just getting sucked into reading stuff on, chats or texting or Voxer or whatever. And another friend was saying that too. And they're both very ancestrally minded. And I said, both of you are, actually there's 3 of them, and they all live really far from everybody, no real community around them, don't have vehicles or don't drive or don't have a license or whatever, all different things, but they're not like seeing people all the time. And I said, when you were here, they didn't even pick up their phones.
Yeah, amazing.
And I thought of that with the rat illustration that Marcus gave, because I had said to them, I don't think you're really addicted. I think you are really
you're in the wrong
lonely or isolated.
You're in the wrong space. Yeah.
Looking. Yeah. And that's the challenge we run into is they can't really, like, they're on some of them big properties or whatever. It's not they can just change everything, but what can change and how can it change? And we have stories of people who lived isolated, at lighthouse towers and stuff that would go crazy eventually because we are herd animals. And, maybe they would have instead been like, oh, I was addicted to Facebook or something, rather than, well, I went crazy and walked off a cliff because I just couldn't take the isolation anymore. But like, we really need that. And so Marcus's example was so poignant.
I couldn't believe it when he said that, because I mean, he's like super scientist, he reads everything, and he somehow manages to just have it in his head, like available to delve into at any point. I don't know how he does it, but the idea that those, the rats, that they keep choosing to have that addiction when they're isolated, and then they they just don't when they're not. I mean, it's so huge.
When he put them in the rat park, that just blew my mind. And I was like, this is why social media is taking over. Because
absolutely.
We have created in the past couple decades the most nuclear, isolated type of society that you can imagine. Everybody's like hermits, basically. And then you put a phone in their hand where they can get, actually connect to, and I'm not saying this lightly, they can connect to true friends. Like Leah and I have connected over the internet. You and I connected over the internet, true friendships and friendships that leave you thinking and considering what you'll say and composing messages in your head to send later, real friendships. And you hand that to somebody who's completely isolated. Of course they're going to push that button again.
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't they?
And
the episode was really, really good.
And it perpetuates it, because once you start those connections on there, it's easier to just stay on those connections on there and not get out. It's interesting that I remember Katie Bowman saying something I read of hers maybe 4 or 5 years ago. She was doing this kind of drive on social media, I think, to try and get people to put down their phones. And she said the more time you give to the virtual world, the less energy you have for outside. That's what happens. And so, if you want to be off your phone more, you actually physically have to go out and try to connect with real people. And when you start doing that, you won't have as much energy to be on your phone, because your energy will be going there. But you have to actually push the energy to go in a different direction to start with. Otherwise, it's just going to get sucked back into that. And it feels like that fits with Marcus's study, because if we look down from the phone and try and go out and make connections, those connections do work a bit like glue, because when we meet someone we connect with, it's so different being with someone in person, looking in their eyes, being able to feel their energy. And that gives us the motivation potentially to stay out there rather than go back into a phone. So I feel like it's each of those options perpetuates itself. And if we're not careful and conscious, we can end up just perpetuating the online world to our disservice.
Yeah. Well, to Marcus's, not metaphor, but the study that he was talking about, but to carry it as a metaphor, we have to build the park. Like he's talking about a rat park that the scientist built for rats, Yeah. And if you go listen to the episode, he's referencing a study where rats were given this button to push to get, cocaine, basically. And they're like, oh, wow, look, the rats will just push it forever. They just look, human nature, will just take the addiction. And then he was like, yeah, but what if those rats are all isolated and in cubes? What if you gave them like a stimulating environment? And he gave them this beautiful little rat park. And lo and behold, they weren't as interested in the cocaine anymore, which can I also say one of my favorite things about Marcus is when he talks, because he knows what he's talking about so well. He talks pretty fast, and then he'll suddenly do this really quick, super detailed, super articulate aside, and then he'll say, anywho, and go back into it. Every time he did that, I just laughed. I just loved it so much. But it made me think, oh my gosh, we have to build the park. It's up to us. And it's a lot for us, but guess what? Then our kids get to live in the park. Our kids have the advantage of the park that we've put all our effort into.
Yes.
And so we're making it a little bit easier for the next generation. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Also, Alison, when I come to England, listening to you and Marcus record live together, I was like, yeah, when I come to England, Rob and Gabriel are just going to have to plan something, because we're going to record every single day.
Oh, I think we should record a lot. I think we should video possibly as well, though Rob might have to be here for that one.
Ooh.
But I think we should definitely record in person. I think we should go out somewhere and take the microphone with us and talk there as well, which would be nice.
Maybe we can go to Fiona's.
Yeah, that would be nice.
I don't know if that's an option.
It's not too far. It's not too far. We could go to Amelia's. We could
go to Emma's.
Yeah, we could. That's harder because she's the other side of London, up in the. It takes a long time to get there. I've already looked it up. Trust me, it takes a long time to get there from here.
I only really want to see her house, so But to me, everything in England is not that far apart because...
Oh, you'd like Fiona's house, definitely.
I like all y'all's houses. Yeah. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, Alison, I don't even know how long we've been recording.
No, nor do
Probably 6 hours.
I don't know.
See.
It's still light, just about.
Okay. We've been on here for an hour and 45 minutes.
So
I don't know how long the actual recording is because some of the beginning was just setting up. But
yeah, we have to go, I think. Thank you very much.
It's a good one.
And this is our last KTC for 2025, isn't it? Because this is a December one. So we will be back.
One more episode to come out this month, and then
we will be back in.
And then it'll be the new year,
January, ready for another year of brilliant podcasts.
Building the park, the rat park.
Yeah, indeed. Lovely to talk to you.
Ready for it. Good to see you, Alison. Have a good afternoon,
and you have a good day. Bye for now.
Bye.
If you'd like to support the podcast, you can join our community. Choose from various levels depending on your budget. Take a look at what we offer at ancestralkitchenpodcast.com/join. You can sponsor an episode or check out our beautiful sustainable merchandise at ancestralkitchenpodcast.com/merch. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. And if you know someone who would love our show, tell them about us. Thank you. You are helping bring ancestral food into modern kitchens, changing the world one plate at a time.